Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Pathfinder Conversations. Pathfinder Conversation is the show where we explore real career journeys, leadership lessons, and practical insight from professionals navigating technology, cybersecurity, and risk in today's evolving landscape. I am your host, Raphael Olushola Adeyemo. On this podcast, we focus less on the theoretical and more on the lived experiences behind the careers people are building across industries and across geographies. And today's conversation is particularly interesting because it touches on something many professionals experience but rarely discuss openly: how you build credibility when you move across markets and professional environments. Today, I'm joined by a friend, a colleague, Mandip Singh, an experienced information security professional with over 14 years of experience in cybersecurity, spanning consulting and financial institutions. Mandip holds multiple respected industry standard certifications, including CISSP, C-Risk, and CISA, and has worked extensively across security assurance, governance frameworks, and technology risk, and across markets as well, from India then to Canada. But beyond the technical side of the profession, Mandip has also been someone who invests in the community. During my time serving as president of ISC2 Toronto chapter, Mandip volunteered with the chapter and played a very important role, in fact, across portfolios in some of the strategies that helped us reposition and strengthen the ISC2 Toronto chapter community. And that is something I always appreciate. When professionals are not only building their careers, but also contributing to the ecosystem around them. Mandy, welcome to Pathfinder Conversations.
Thank you very much, Raf, for introducing me. And yes, you said it rightly. I'm more of your friend. We have worked in the past as well on many occasions and different forums. But yes, happy to be on your podcast. And yeah, I'm excited to share my set of experiences from my background, industries, and what all.
Yeah, that's good. You're welcome, my friend. So, Mandy, before we get into some of the technical and career insight, I like to start with the human side of your journey. Every professional story has a starting point.
Yes.
So, why not take us back a bit? What originally drew you into cybersecurity and information security?
Great. So, Raf, that's a good question. And to be honest, my cybersecurity career started off with a chance, right? So it was purely a chance. Like I didn't even, I wasn't even having much knowledge about what cybersecurity all about, right? So when I was in college, like I completed my engineering degree right back in India in 2009, right? So, and it's very common in the Indian campuses and colleges that, especially if you're doing engineering, is that all the major companies tend to visit your college and they recruit candidates from the college itself. So I was fortunate enough back in 2009 that one company came into our campus and recruited me, right? So that company was Computer Sciences Corporation. It's now known as DXC Technologies. And when I was hired, I wasn't told the role that I was getting hired into, to be honest. They interviewed me on the basic networking principles, right, when I was in the college. And based on that interview, they shortlisted me. There were a few rounds. And then on my first day of joining, they told me about the team I'm getting into, right? So, and that team was cybersecurity team within Computer Sciences Corporation. So, yeah. And to be honest, like that was an eye opener for me because until then I knew that, okay, there's only one team called IT. And I come from those days when security wasn't even a different function. It was integrated with the old IT operations, right? So it wasn't like a separate function altogether. So yes, and that was my starting point. So I worked in Computer Sciences Corporation for close to 3 years, and I was fortunate again to work in different domains within cybersecurity within that organization. I started off working in the security operations centers, got my hand dirty on the IDS, IPS, vulnerability management scanner tools, and SIM solutions, and so on and so forth. Right, and that actually laid foundation to where I am now. To be honest, like to step into a GRC role, you need to have your foundation solid, right? So, getting experience on the security of the tools like SIM solutions or IDS, IPS, or even running vulnerability scanners, it basically opens up your horizon to know, okay, what's the threat landscape? It tells you about the three basic concepts around, what's a threat, what's a vulnerability, and what's a risk, right? And not just on the conceptual level, but on the practical level. So that was my starting point. I just don't want to take more time to discuss that, but yeah, that has been my
Yeah,
starting.
and that is very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it's good to know that it wasn't really what you set out to do. It came upon you probably by chance, and now you've become an OG, and you've spent over a decade in this same industry in the field of information security. And looking back at those early days, early years, you and I just wanted to pick your brain looking at those early years. What were some of the formative experiences that shaped the way you approach the profession today?
Right. So back in the days, like when I was working on those SIM solutions and the IDS, IPS tools in the bank, the approach we used to follow was more of a reactive approach. When something happens, when some incident happens, then we step into action. We open up a war room, we discuss the security incident, and then we look into the root cause analysis and find the resolution path, right? And over the years, what we have seen is that, with the changing threat landscape, we have to change our approach. And the approach has changed over the past many years. Like I have spent close to 15 to 16 years in this industry, and I have seen that how the landscape has evolved in a big way, right? And that's what I'm saying. So when I was working in that organization, we started off with following a reactive approach. Today, I'm following a proactive approach. Back then, there was no much awareness within the technology stakeholders as to what the security entails, right? What are the consequences? But nowadays, like everyone is on the hook, right? So everyone within the technology landscape or environment knows about what the security is, right? There has been more awareness over the past many years to explain and to educate people within that organization, right? And this even it starts off from the security trainings, and it goes up at how it impacts them directly, because working in the financial industry, you have to be keeping abreast of the what's the latest regulation which has come into the place, right? And you're bound by these regulators so heavily that you can't escape the
Mhm.
security controls, right, that you need to have in place. So I think yes, so this is a shift that I've seen over the past many years, if you ask me.
Yeah, and I perfectly, totally agree with you that security is moving because initially we used to, play the catch-up game. Like
Yeah.
there will be an incident, we fix the incident, we put in one or two things that we can put in to deter the bad guys. But now the approach is totally changing
Right.
because the technological landscape is also evolving. In fact, I've seen some organizations having a specific role called proactive security evangelist.
Yes.
Somebody that kind of think ahead of time and that puts in some security stuff in place. And that is also what we refer to as resilience. Because if you want to be resilient, then you have to think of a couple of instances or situations that through which you may be attacked. And if you do get attacked, because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
It's a
When you do get attacked, what do you have in place to get it back into operation as soon as possible? That's something good to share.
yes.
You have also made a transition that many professionals listening to this podcast are navigating themselves, right? Moving into a new country from India to Canada, adapting to a new professional environment, starting your family and everything is getting expanded. You know, Coming to Canada often means learning not just a new workplace. That's the reality. We are not just learning a new workplace culture, but there are new expectations around communication, how you talk, influence, and even your credibility. In your own words, what were some of the adjustments that you had to make when you were entering the Canadian cybersecurity and risk landscape?
Right. So I moved in Canada sometime in 2019, right? So before that, I was working with Deloitte, so I had to quit my job in India and then move to Canada. And after landing in Canada, it took me close to 3 or 4 months to, find the job, right? So I was trying hard to get a job before landing Canada, but then I wasn't successful enough to get that. But eventually, once I landed, it took me like 3 months of good hard work to land up a job. And you know what? The common theme around that time, and I'm not sure if this is still prevalent or not, but was that you don't have the Canadian experience, right? Now, that used to startle me a lot. Like, I have come from like an industry which is serving global clients. I have worked with stakeholders from across the globe, right? And I have rather global experience compared to just a Canadian experience, right? So back in the Deloitte days, I even worked with the Deloitte member firm, right? And the Deloitte stakeholders and companies. But then they used to say that, okay, you don't have the Canadian work experience, right? And that was kind of a showstopper. But eventually, the companies who basically offered me the role, I actually got multiple offers back then, and I chose Scotiabank. But then they were considerate to consider my the experience which I brought on the table and my knowledge and the certifications. So they understood the task out there. That was that was one, I would say, showstopper, or I would say, I wasn't a showstopper for me. It was more eye opener for me, right? That okay, the companies out here, they expect people to have Canadian work experience. And then once I entered the workplace, and obviously you mentioned about the workplace culture is definitely different from where I come, right? Here, I mean, I would say emphasis is given more on the work-life balance, right? So I truly respect that, and I was fortunate enough as part of my Scotiabank tenure, I got to work with great leaders who respected that. And it was demonstrated well during the COVID because after 2019, COVID came into place and companies took cognizant of it. They shifted the work into fully remote capacity, right? And also ensuring that employees' needs are met, right? In any shape or form. So yeah, that was the good level of comfort which was extended by the organizations back then, right? Speaking of the work culture and the team dynamics, so I think that was also good for me. Why? Because here, it's all multicultural environment, right? So even if you work in the professional sphere or you out in the personal world, you always tend to meet people from different backgrounds. So like within Scotia, I was working in a team with people coming from different backgrounds, bringing different cultures, right? So, and the work style was also different, which I totally respected. Like some people were aggressive in nature, some people were passive in nature. So, it's definitely a good eye opener for me as well. So that's something which I also experienced back in the days. But over the period of time, I adjusted well, right, to the Canadian landscape. The plus point for me was like, I think was as I said, I already had experience working with stakeholders globally. So it didn't take me much to catch up on, the game in the Canadian work landscape. And obviously, learning about the Canadian regulations and laws, and that was also a good like experience for me, like learning about what OSPI does, and especially working in a bank, you have to be apprised of everything. So not just like OSPI,
Mm.
but also PCI DSS and Intrac. So because we used to be part of these assessments, readiness assessments or some sort of an assessment to ensure that, okay, our business line is compliant towards the requirements. So yes, that was a great experience.
And that's very good to know. I think a couple of people when I came to Canada 2018, I think a year before you, and Canadian experience was a big thing. People already working established, some people already director before leaving their country of birth or resident to Canada, and they got here, and it was all about Canadian experience. Somebody like you with global experience, working across, uh, across industries and also across a lot of geographical locations. And you're coming here, and the most important thing to people is all about Canadian experience. You get to ask a lot of questions. And it's good to, when you pointed it out about the interest and the conscious effort of your leaders that time to enforce a work-life balance. And I was with Scotiabank in 2019 as well. I think I started in March of 2019, just a week before we were sent back home. So I only had a week. I only had a week in the office before we were asked to move to fully remote option. You've experienced two different sides of this profession. You've been in the consulting environment where, you know, see multiple organizations and challenges, and also it's fast paced. I've not been in consulting, but I was told that it's paced, and maybe it's faster than the normal. And also you've been in financial institutions like the TDs and the social banks of this world. The focus is more on internal governance and operational resilience, things that you really do not deal with more in consulting. How did your mindset change when you were moving between these environments?
So you rightly said, Raf, like when you're working in the consulting industry, so it's always a fast-paced environment wherein I used to work on multiple projects with clients and shifting industries. Like one time I'm working on a financial services client, and the second time, like the next hour, I'm working on a, let's say, a telecommunications client, right? So you have to like switch your mindset like all the time, right? But one good thing, and it used to take a toll on me, to be honest, right? By working in a consulting world is not like an easy task. It's always demanding. But the good thing which I like about the consulting industry is that it expands your horizon. I mean, it builds up your network, it gives you immense exposure, and it also elevates your communication skills and the stakeholder collaboration skills. It basically preps you to work in any industry globally. And that's the reason why. And after spending like 3 years in the consulting world, I thought, okay, you know what? I've moved to a new country. Let's start with a fresh slate and work in a financial industry wherein I already have experience. So I chose to work in a bank, right? And I was already having or carrying that experience from my prior organization. The profile was also pretty much similar to what I used to do in Deloitte, right? For majority of my clients. So that way I made that conscious decision to moving into financial industry. But after moving into financial industry, then I was exposed to, as I said earlier, the scrutiny of, multiple stakeholders, not just internally, but externally as well. So internally,
Mm,
you've got like second line, you've got third line, and then outside of the company, you got like auditors, and we have regulators. And then you also get nudged by the, some privacy laws and regulations as well. So I think that was a different ball game altogether. And you also have to work within a perimeter, right? As you also said, right? So
mm,
it's always a
yeah.
close perimeter that you have to work on, and with a set number of people or stakeholders, right? And you actually grow your network within that organization itself. Like
Mm,
everyone, right? So and again, like Canadian industry and especially our industry, like cybersecurity, is very small. It's actually a close knit world where everyone knows
yeah.
everyone, right? And I'm realizing it now because being part of the security conferences, like you used to work in Scotiabank, you used to work in TD, right? That's the kind of discussions which happen, and then we tend to find out mutual connections, right? So yes, and that's something which actually helped me while I was part of Scotiabank, is that building that network. And now today, as I'm speaking, I know people who have been in Scotiabank. Now they're in different banks altogether, right? So someone is working CIBC, someone is working in like say BMO, right? And RBC. So yes. So that basically expands your network within the Canadian financial landscape.
Yeah, and I think you started by saying, yeah, it took a toll on you, the consulting experience, but it kind of laid the foundation for you for stakeholder management. It expanded your horizon, gives you the opportunity to, to work across multiple stakeholders, people that you do not even have to meet if you were to be boxed up in a normal financial institution, which is great. From your perspective, what skills do you think would help professionals to succeed more when they are moving from advisory roles into industry roles?
So if anyone is trying to navigate from, let's say, advisory role to industry role. I mean, you need to be, because again, you have to focus on that particular industry and the things which revolve around that industry, right? So, for example, I have worked in the healthcare industry as well extensively, right, for about 3 years. And my whole, I mean, all the time I was involved in ensuring that, okay, I was reading about the HIPAA. I was reading about the high trust, and these are the high trusts are like similar to NIST. There's this framework for just specifically for the healthcare industry. Used to talk about the PHI, the PIs, and of the world, and talk about data privacy and all that. So I think because you're moving from an advisory or consulting world to, let's say, a industry, and that industry could be anything, right? That industry could be a financial bank or could be a telecommunications giant. You have to first, bring this required set of knowledge about the industry itself, right? So, and how that industry is operating in that particular geography. So, and it's not just about Canada, Raf, right? So, this advice is applicable to any professional across the globe. So, you have to first understand how that industry is being regulated within that geography. If you're working in Europe and if you're working in a bank, right? So, the kind of regulatory lens would be different compared to working in some other part of the world. So I think that's very important to know about the industry. And then secondly, once you enter the industry, you have to be making connections with the stakeholders that you know would be part of your day in, day out operations, right? So let's say if I'm talking to some technology teams, right? So I'm making sure that build that network because I know that I have to work closely with these stakeholders, right, to get to the finish line. So I think building a network within that industry, because again, these skills are something which you will not be learning new, right? Because you always bring networking skills, communication skills from the industry, from the advisory or the consulting world with you while moving into the industry. You just have to implement it in a very focused way. So these are my 2 cents on
Yeah,
this.
of course, you've given us more than 2 cents, and it's good to know. Focus on the industry, the required knowledge, how exactly the industry is being regulated. Like the financial industry is being regulated by OSFI. I think OSFI is doing a lot in that space. Let's talk about the other dimension of your journey, which is shifting from being a full-time employee to working as a contractor. I'm very certain, even though you are here to confirm that the transition will change how you operate inside the organization. But I think the first thing I would like to know is how do you build trust as a contractor? How do you deliver value quickly? What have you learned about positioning yourself effectively when you step into organizations in that capacity?
So when you're hired as a contractor, the employer, thinks about you as a SME in a particular field, right? So for me, it was bringing the wealth of experience and knowledge from the GRC domain on the table. So when I was hired, right, so with TD, I was given that opportunity to first, learn the more about how TD operates, right, and how my business line operates. When you're in a contractor shoes, you are on the floor on day one, like you don't get much time to train, to go onto those trainings and all that, right? So you are on the floor, you're on the hitting the production floor on day one. So I used to be part of the meetings, and like at the first, in the initial few days, you tend to think a lot about what's the context. And over the past 1 week, then you realize, okay, you get a grasp of things and you get a hold of, okay, this is what you're talking about. Because the security issues and the controls I've seen is like it's a common theme, right? Like you take
Mm.
any control, it's just that the organizations differ, the teams differ, how they are structured, they are differ, right? But the core security concepts, the core security issues are actually common. The domains are common across any organization. So that's where I played a role, because and obviously, if you're coming as a contractor, the employer is keen to know more about from your experiences. They seek advice from you. They seek, suggestions from you that how they can do things differently, you know, like coming from an outside world and then joining an organization that basically they're keen to know about, okay, what would you do in this kind of a situation? Right? So your ideas are actually very much valued across the board. And if even if one idea is implemented and it makes a big difference, right, in making sure that, okay, in making sure that the security controls are in place and they're working effectively, and it overall contributes to the security posture, then your work is very well recognized. And that's something which I've learned as part of being this in this position. And secondly, to you, and as I said earlier, right? So to your point, generally the contractors, they tend to work in silos. But in my case, I've been blessed to have a team which basically considers the employees and the contractors at par. We work in a very close network environment, and wherein we share ideas, exchange ideas, right? And the success is celebrated across the team,
Mm.
right? And yeah, so I'm pretty much happy where I am now.
Yeah, that is good to know that things are changing. That may lead us to what I quickly wanted to bring up. One
Yes,
thing I always respect is professionals who contribute beyond their day job. I've been 8 years in Canada, and I'm proud to say that out of the 8 years, over 7 years, I've been volunteering.
amazing.
I started in Calgary, where I volunteered at the airport. That's hospitality management. Then I moved to Toronto and I started volunteering in the same year with IC2 Toronto chapter. And that was actually where I met you. What we did, what we achieved became much more pronounced during the period where we realized and decided to revamp the chapter. That was a period where the chapter was going through an important transformation, a
Yeah,
total turnaround.
right.
Now, from your perspective, why do you think involvement in professional communities matter in cybersecurity for cybersecurity professionals?
It does matter, Raf. And you have been a strong candidate, I would say, or you have been a strong pillar in the industry, and especially in the Canadian landscape. I've seen myself. Like, I treat you as my mentor. I've learned a lot from you. One thing you have done incredibly so far is like giving back to the society, right? I've seen your involvement in the educational institutions, right? You're a faculty. You basically you do lessons, right? And then at the same time, you've been part of the chapter, you're running this podcast. I mean, all this contributes to giving back to the society. And I've been a strong or a firm believer of the same, right? Because it's life is not the same for everyone, especially in Canada,
Mm,
right? I mean, I see a lot of people reaching out, and the promises that the Canadian institutions have made about, they roll out the cybersecurity programs, and this always say about, there's so much of demand of cybersecurity professionals, but when the graduates, they come out in the market, they see these job postings, right? They see you need experienced candidates in the profile for that particular job, right? So there are hardly any entry level jobs you see, right, in the industry. So again, and that's where they need a helping hand, in my opinion, right? So they need a helping hand from a professional, so that if we can play any role in their career succession, or even if they get a good start, right, in their earlier days of career, that's a big win for us, right? Like, that's how we feel accomplished. It's not just about your own accomplishment, but seeing others' accomplishment as well. You become happy when you see others succeed, right? And
mm.
that's the whole essence of giving back to the society in any shape or form. I have been part of ISC2 chapter, not just thinking, okay, it's going to look good on my LinkedIn profile, but no, it was a genuine and wholeheartedly effort which I put in, which you put in, right? During your years, to see like how can we benefit the society, right? In any shape or form.
Yeah, and you just took me to what would have been the follow-up question. I would have asked you candidly, if you think that we still have entry level jobs in cybersecurity, I think you touched on that, and you also spoke to what really drove us into volunteering with the chapter and what is still driving us now to give back to the society and help the young professionals, those people who are just coming out of school or people that are trying to make a career pivot
Yes.
into cybersecurity. And I think it's very important for them to engage with communities like ISC, their local chapters. We have the Toronto chapter, we have Waterloo, we have Ottawa, we have Montreal, we have all across the world. We have in Nigeria, we have in New Delhi.
Yes.
I've engaged with quite a number of them across the world. We have in New Jersey as well. And it does not matter. You do not need the ISC2 certification to belong to those communities. So that's something that I want people to know. And me, I'm a big advocate for that because I've lived it. I volunteered my time. And for us, it wasn't about what we are going to get out of it. It's just about the motivation. It's just about, doing something that will help other people, paying it forward. So that's good. Thank you so much for all you've been able to do. Let's bring this conversation back to the audience. Maybe just for the next minute. Many people listening are either early in their career or navigating changes, transitions, pivoting. So whether that is, sometimes people are also moving between countries. People
Right.
are changing industries like you did, came to Canada, you decide, okay, let me try my hands on the financial industry. Or maybe they are also repositioning themselves professionally. Based on your experience, what are two or three things that you think professionals should focus on if they want to build credibility in cybersecurity and risk management?
All right. So the first thing which I want to emphasize more on is that, and as you know, Raf, there is a cutthroat competition when it comes to cybersecurity industry in Canada, right? So if any job gets posted anywhere, there are so many applicants who actually apply for that same job, right? So one thing I just need to emphasize more on is to show up. Is that like whenever there is an opportunity for you to connect with people from your industry, show up over there. Like be part of the community, right? As much extent as possible. Like you have seen, I have seen, we have reaped the benefits of, running the chapter, right? Being part of the chapter, not just like ISC, but there are other communities as well. ISACA has their own chapter, and then we have the ISF community, we have the FSP community, right? So there are so many communities out there who you can be part of, and also make yourself present at the conferences. Like we have Sector, we have CyberX, right? So, and try to be volunteers because you never know from where this opportunity may land up on your lap, right? So I've seen people interacting with the vendor booths and of the startup firms, because there are
Mm,
so many startup firms across Canada in security, right? And they land up a job with them. So you never know from where this opportunity may land up on your lap. So, and as we have been hearing a lot from the early years, that your network is your net worth. So, and I think that truly plays a good role, ensuring that you are to succeed in your professional career in Canada. Second point which I want to mention or call out over here is that do something out of the box, because everyone has a degree, right? So they always carry the degree. In some cases, they also have certifications. But what extra you bring on the table, you have to demonstrate a passion for the job that you're applying for, right? It's just not the knowledge, but even having some practical hands-on experience also helps. I think that basically makes you stand out. So for example, like there are so many security tools out there which offer demo, right? So you
mm,
can use security tool demos, right, to get your hands dirty on the different security tools. And let's say there's an IDS tool, there's a vulnerability scanner tool, there's a GRC tools out there, right? So that's an eye opener, and basically that gives you a vision. And I've seen people, they have set up many labs at their home where they make or break things. So having that level of passion can really elevate your spot in terms of getting to a good career position. So these are the two things which I want to emphasize on. There are many other things which I normally advise people on, but these two things stand out of all these.
yeah, and these two things that you mentioned, I'll call them two categories
Two categories.
because you also kind of broke them down into little chunks to really drive on what you were trying to say. Culture, competition, doing something out of the box, extraordinary. It may be little, but ensure that you do something to show that this is exactly what you want. Just to build on what you said, I personally know someone who was pivoting into the field. They tried a couple of times. They attended some boot camps. They couldn't get what they wanted. So they had a chat with me. I encouraged them to go to school. Like, if you've tried this and they are not working, why not try going back to school? Which
Exactly.
they did. And they attended a conference as they were finishing from school, from that program. They attended a conference. I won't give more. I won't give more than necessary information about the individual. But they attended a conference and they were chatting with a vendor and they got a job they resumed in less than 2 weeks. Just very recently, I saw on LinkedIn that the individual also got promoted. And I was like, woo, I love this. You're not the only one looking for a job. There are a lot of people.
Yes.
But one thing you can do for yourself, show up, be part of communities. You mentioned the various communities. Yours may not be in cybersecurity. Maybe you're in project management. Most of the professionals, they have professional bodies that you can be part of. Show up. You said be present at conferences. When you show up, then find some time to just volunteer a bit of your time, because according to you, in your own words, you said because you do not know where exactly your break is going to come from. So
Exactly.
I love that. Do something out of the box. Do something to demonstrate the passion. If you look at it today, what skills do you believe will define successful professionals in this field over the next 5 years? Maybe we should limit it to 5 years.
I would say people always tend to think about what's coming, right? What's the new thing, right? Right now they're talking about AI. A few years ago, they used to talk about cloud. One thing we should never forget is that you need to have your foundation solid, right? It's like security concepts never change. Technologies change, right? Like encryption, right? Or any controls around, let's say, privileged access management. These concepts never change, right? You will get a new tool in the market which can say, okay, this is an AI driven GRC solution, there's an AI driven encryption solution, or let's say a PAM solution. But you need to have your foundation solid, right? That's number one thing. Number two is that whatever is happening around you, the buzzwords, you need to understand the real use cases, not just like learn more about the definition of what an AI is, right? What Gen AI is, but you need to be aware of the use cases as to how it will help a particular problem statement, right? And that's something which I want to advise to professionals. Let's say, even if they are working and they're not, I mean, nowadays, I would say every organization is using AI in some shape or form, right? So, how they can elevate that, how they can, automate the tasks using AI, which can, reduce the manual work, and it can increase the productivity, it can increase the efficiency, it can increase the accuracy, right? So I would say we can build onto those use cases. Then I think like having a strong foundation and obviously knowing about the real use cases through AI can actually act as a contributing factors to your professional growth in the next 5 years.
Wow. Wow. Foundational knowledge is as important as ever, because security concepts would not change.
Would never
It's
change.
still the same. How we implement, what we implement, the tools, the technology, they may change, but
Yes.
the concept driving it, secure by design, it will not change. It's still going to be the same thing.
It will never change.
Yo,
Yes.
cool.
Yeah.
I so much appreciate you for that and understand the real use cases. It's not just you knowing the definition for artificial intelligence or what large language model is, but the real use cases that you can apply to solve a certain problems. Yeah, yeah, that is good. Thank you so much, Mandip. I so much spending my time with you. One last thing I would like us to close this session with is that from your own side of things, in your own world, looking at a lot of changes coming up, looking at the tensions around the world from Middle East to every part of the world, if you are to summarize everything in one word or in two words or in one sentence, what will it be?
I would say that keep your ground, like stay grounded. A lot of things are happening around you, but I think what you need to focus more is on your personal self and the people around you. That matters the most, right? And then comes anything else, in my opinion. So if you are grounded, if you are safe and sound, and if the people who matter the most to you are in good health and they are doing well, I think that's what matters in the end. And I mean, you are here like in a different country. You are switching to the career progression path, which basically gives you more. All this, you're doing it for yourself and your family, right? So I think that matters the most. So keep a good care of yourself and your family, and rest everything is being taken care of. Things happen. There are things which are out of your control. You can't do anything, right? So, and we are risk professionals, right? So if you think from that perspective, like we can do as much as we can to averse a risk, right? Which is beyond our control. I know I've said a lot. It's not one word or two words or one sentence, but this is my take on that.
I love all you have said. Keep grounded. Keep yourself grounded. Be focused. There are a lot of things that are outside of your control
Exactly.
that
You
you
get distracted
cannot do.
easily. Yes. Yeah,
You cannot do any. You cannot do anything about. Yeah. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Take care of those people that care about you.
exactly.
I think that is great. I know I said that we are rounding up, but I just want this is going to be the last question. This is
Okay.
I think we should not just round up without you taking this. If you could go back and speak to your younger self at the beginning of your cybersecurity career, what advice would you give to your younger self, 25, 26 years old?
Wow, that's a good question. So, I mean, as I said, right, when I started off my career in cybersecurity, I literally had no knowledge about it, like what it entails to. And you know what? I used to crib about the long hours I used to spend at the security operations center, right? Sitting in front of four screens, seeing those alerts popping up. And, sometimes it used to get boring. Sometimes it used to get interesting when you used to see the alerts popping up and, doing the analysis. But one piece of advice I want to give it to myself if I really want to go back is that I think I should have gathered more experience in different security domains, because that's something which I didn't do, or at least I would say I didn't get opportunity on to work on those. Like, I know that I've said that I've worked in different domains, but I haven't touched all the domains, right? But let's say application security is one domain which I didn't have much experience in terms, practical experience on. I have worked on the OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities, but then, getting hands on working in a red team is something which I didn't get much experience on. And I was always interested in doing that. But nevertheless, I think it's always a learning curve for you, Raf. Like, you don't get everything what you wish for, right? And some things you have to just leave it on the fate. There's so much you can do, right? I think hard work and luck both play a good role in anyone's progression, right? So I'm a strong believer of luck as well, if you ask me.
Yeah, thanks so much. You would have advised your younger self to try and touch on
Yeah,
other domains, which I say is good, but sometimes career is not linear. It just take us from where we are and dump us
exactly.
somewhere else. Then we move from there and move to another place. That's good to know. Thank you so much, Mandip, for taking your time to share your journey and to share your insights with me today. And to everyone listening, thank you so much for joining us on Pathfinder Conversations. If this discussion resonated with you, please go ahead and share it with someone in your network who is navigating a similar journey. Until next time, follow Mandip advice, keep grounded, keep building, keep learning, and I want to say keep finding your path. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.